All right, y'all. President Barack Obama releases his part one. This is part one of his book, A Promised Land, which I read every chance I get. I think it's incredible. I think it's around page 60. He talks about Katrina and how even though New Orleans was not his area, that was no connection whatsoever, he found that going down there, the issues down there pretty much echoed what was happening in Illinois. And it helped inform him of the bigger issues that are taking place. I think about that when I talk to some of the delegates. There are Eastern delegates, there's chorus delegates, there's principal delegates, there's 200 of us all over the place. But as we're all starting to learn more about each other and the issues of certain regions, we learn we're not that different. And I think specifically about that passage in President Barack Obama's book, specifically about him talking about Katrina, because I think part of good diplomacy, a part of good governing is understanding the world around. I think part of that is also understanding our history. So today, I think we're going to uncover some history. We're going to figure out some things, and we're going to figure out how to go forward, because I have three of the most amazing delegates, as in I am giddy, who are currently serving wonderfully in their positions in the Actors Equity Association. I am excited to get to them, so I'm going to breeze through this opening as fast as I can so that we can save a lot of that time to just talk with these people. The crazy thing is the four of us have never been together conversing. So it's interesting to know that we're all doing these incredible things, but we've never gotten into a room and just shared notes. So I think, if anything, you were about to walk in on a live note sharing session, and we're just going to sit here bouncing off of each other. So first thing I want to talk about is the bill itself, the Black Theater Matters bill, which, if I can get that ticker down there, feel free to visit. Also, if you have any problems or anything that you'd like to talk about, that is the place to go. We have until, I think it's March 6th or somewhere around that ballpark, where we have to turn the bill in. It is very much incomplete, as in we don't have the whereas section. We don't have any of that. We just have the meat. This is what we want to change, but the why is coming and everything else is going. And we're going to unveil that and release all that as we get through this show. Because part of this is, yes, let's bring about change, but it's also good to know the history and the formation, because we're not going to have the same delegates. If this thing continues, they're going to be cycled through. So what's good is always having a place where people can go through a nice little blueprint, so that the people that come after us have points of or places to go and learn. Which brings me back to Article 1 of the Black Theater Matters Bill, which is the History, Restoration, and Preservation Act, the AEA History and Preservation Act, in which we're looking for a committee to be created so that all of our information can be gathered from the Wagner Library. There's a book that's currently out of print, so we really need to get our hands on that and really get all that information together, not only so it could be like put out in a fun, understandable way, but so when we have people who want to learn more about our union or understand things, or just really understand as they're crafting policy or understand how we got to a place, they can do that through this committee. Now, this committee is important because, for example, I have something called the Under the Umbrella Act, in which we talk about specifically puppetry work and making sure that there's fair compensation. I was talking to someone and I found a resolution that was passed specifically about electioneering. If you know anything about this show, this all started because of a rowdy, rough election, which I have Michael James Bell here today to talk about, but also it kind of goes with Article 7, which is the Lift Every Voice Act, which has a lot of reform, which I think will make the election process a little bit more equitable and make it easier for people who just want to act and not really deal with all the drama of governance to come in, see some things, get a good point of view, and leave. Make it very stop shop. But yes, I found something really interesting. In June 5th, 1962, there was a resolution passed which stated, while members are free to voice any comment in support of or in opposition to candidates in election campaigns, Council believes that all electioneering should be confined to equity matters and should remain within the boundaries of fairness and good taste. No member should be subjected to scurrilous attacks, which may harm his professional career and established reputation. The members' rights to which Equity, as an association, is dedicated to protect. If you have time on your hands and you're just seeing the show for the very first time, I am not going to mention why that stood out to me, but I will say episode 1 in season 1 of The Receipts, episode 8 in season 1 of The Receipts is where you kind of want to go to understand why that was a little more triggering and why I'm like, whew, you might have a lawsuit on your hands. Article 9, Reject the Wall, which calls out the bigoted and manipulative legislation regarding actors looking to join who are not from America. We have Jessica Wu with us, which I think is great. And also, I talked about puppeteering a little bit. That's what brought Erica Walsh in, because I feel like her stance and her activism regarding actor musicians very much parallels that work. So this is going to be a very interesting, again, note session. So that's been 6 minutes and 10 seconds. That is enough. Davon, let's get this group in here. Let's play that intro video.
This week's episode of The Receipts speaks to the topic that sparked the creation of the Black Theater Matters bill, equality. Davon has assembled a panel of elected leaders on the front lines of this fight to expose the public to the policies that can make equality happen. Introducing Michael James Bell, a Western Actors Equity Association delegate and theater lover whose self-proclaimed failure in stage acting brought him success on the screen. His TV credits include How I Met Your Mother, Wilfred, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Station 19, Fresh Off the Boat, For All Mankind, Black Monday, and is currently shooting as a recurring guest star on the new Netflix series True Story with Kevin Hart and Wesley Snipes. Michael serves on the board of the directors of the Center for Election Science, a nonprofit that advocates for better voting methods. For many years, he was the database engineer for MapLight, a nonprofit that tracks the money in American politics. Michael is also active in SAG-AFTRA Governance, the screen, television, and radio-centered sister union to AEA. Erica Walsh is an Eastern Actors Equity Association delegate, actor, and musician based in the New York City area. She was cast as the original ex-girlfriend in the musical Once, and was the last on stage in the Notch Theater Company's folk punk adaptation, Anna Karenina, a riff. She has also been in 6 off-Broadway shows, over 10 film and television productions, including HBO's The Deuce, and over 20 regional productions. She holds an MFA from the American Repertory Theater Institute and a BA from Temple University. Jessica Wu is an Eastern Actors Equity Association delegate, writer, director, and songwriter who began her professional theater career over a decade ago as a dancer, singer, actor, musician, / I quote, "whatever you want me to do if it pays the bills," end quote. She has performed on Broadway, off-Broadway, off-Broadway, in a half-dozen national tours, regional theaters, television, YouTube, and for free for her friends who put up with hearing, "I swear this is the last time," over and over. Selected notable credits include the Broadway revivals of Miss Saigon and A Chorus Line. She spent 2 seasons in the arts leadership as an associate artistic director of Royal Family Production in Times Square, and is now the proud owner and operator of Inspirit Creative, specializing in collaborative creative counseling and development. Davon and his panel of leaders have one item on their agenda: equality, at this stop on the road to the convention.
Whoop, there it is. There they are. Hey, y'all.
That was great.
That intro.
Oh my goodness. Alyssa, that's an Alyssa Gomez special?
No. We haven't even gotten to Alyssa yet. We haven't even gotten there
yet.
Yes, I'm telling you, we're pulling out. If this was Drag Race, I am pulling off the wig and roses are falling
Yeah.
out consecutively. First things first, why, looking at your credits alone from that video, looking at how busy you would have been minus the pandemic, why would you even entertain the idea of running for delegate, especially you, Michael, who's now doing 2 forms of governance?
So me first? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. It just sort of it was a decision that sort of happened before the pandemic anyway, and then just go with it. I figured like you never have time for anything, so you might as well just step forward, and then you end up doing the things you committed to.
How about you, Jessica?
Oh my goodness. I've been repeating the phrase, I find myself in things. That has kind of become this like reality for me. I think it has a lot to do with if you see a problem or if you see something that needs to be done, you can't wait for somebody else to take care of it. And this has been the issues that I want to take care of are the issues that are incredibly important to me. And I'm going to be the one to do them, to like put the effort in and get it done.
Erica.
Yeah. I guess I've always looked at my performance as being like a type of service to people. Because sometimes I never asked to be an actor or musician. It happened and I was ready for it and that was great. And then I continued it because people responded to it. And it did bring me joy, and that's gone right now. So I looked at it of how can I serve? And then somebody said, oh, we need delegates and you should do it. And I was like, okay. And we have the time. And I knew I could make the commitment if things started coming back, that was still something that I can dedicate to beyond just a shutdown.
What has the process been like? I know we haven't hit our first convention yet, but going through, forming, connecting, just the entire process, and just it feels like you delegates got thrown into the water, just thrown in. So what has that been like? Just learning to swim.
I would love to just give a shout out to BIPOC delegates, our group that kind of got a lot of us into this. And I mean, we originally came together without, it was not about running on some kind of united platform, but just to be about, we need representation and we're going to be that representation. And the coming together of that group has just been incredible.
How about all the way over there in Los Angeles, Michael?
I find it really exciting. Like I've always sort of, kind of my thing is trying to sort of re-engage and find ways to get this sort of large portion of the membership that's not really engaged with the union engaged. And I think that this convention, the delegates in the convention has just been a great, just so much excitement and people bringing stuff to the table. It's like, I can't say enough good things about it. I'm really excited that they did that, and I'm really appreciative that they took this risk. And yeah.
How about yourself, Erica?
Yeah, it does feel like swimming with like floaties and a lot of splashing because I've never been involved in an organization like this before. So it's like, oh, let's learn everything right now. And there's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of passionate people out there who are seeing representation for themselves for the first time and know people are working. And then we're just like, can we do it now? Can we do it now? Like there's that excitement, and then like not all of the outlets are yet in place for it. So it's an emotional roller coaster.
It is a roller coaster. Speaking of, let's get into this roller coaster. Are we good to do this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So Michael James Bell gave an incredible webinar to some of us delegates and counselors, just breaking down election reform. And there were a couple of things in it. I was like, okay, we got to share this now. People got to know this exists. So number one, let's get to know Michael. Michael, where is it? The election science. That's what it is. So what is the Center of Election Science and what's your involvement?
Center for Election Science is a nonpartisan nonprofit. It's been around for about 10 years. It's very young. It started with a bunch of tech math voting nerds that were, I think it was part of a listserv, and they were like, let's form an organization. And a lot of people know that our elections are problematic. Like the voting system that we use is problematic. We have vote splitting. I mean, we saw it in 2000 in the presidential election with Gore and Nader. Nader basically taking enough votes away from Gore to switch the winning to Bush, for example. So we know that. So a lot of people know that elections are broken, and what they did was they went in and they did a lot of research and they studied a lot of different voting methods, and they said, okay, they came up with something called approval voting, which they decided was this is the one we're going to advocate for because it's super, super simple and easy to implement, and it is also one of the very best as far as allowing the voter to express what they want to express. And I found them when I read a book called Gaming the Vote by William Poundstone about 10 years ago. That is still a fantastic book to read. It's the best book to read on election reform, Gaming the Vote by William Poundstone. I'll say it again, in case anybody wants to read it. It's very entertaining. It's a history of vote splitting in the United States, and it's a wonderful introduction. And he talks about a lot of different methods, and I came out of that going, okay, who's doing this? And I found the Center for Election Science. They didn't have basically any paid staff at that point or hardly any funding. I started giving them like $50 a year. And they, over the last few years, have gotten some great funding and had huge, has gotten a couple big grants from Open Philanthropy and turned it into two huge successes. There are now 2 cities in the US that use approval voting, Fargo in 2018 and St. Louis this last November just passed their ballot measure to implement approval voting in St. Louis. And so it's a very exciting thing to be involved with now. Oh, and I joined the board of directors a couple of years ago because I was like, this is my thing. This is the thing that a lack of a responsive government is the thing that is preventing us from solving all the other problems. Climate change, eternal war. I mean, money in politics, like whatever it is, the fact that our government isn't listening to the people so much as they're listening to these sort of large multinational corporations is getting in the way of them doing what they ought to be doing for everyone's benefit.
So was it the book? Was it the book that got you interested in all this?
Yeah. I mean, I'd been interested for a long time. I mean, I've been frustrated by elections all my life. And what frustrated me was, we'd have like a spoiler effect like Nader in 2000. And a lot of my friends are people who would absolutely be politically aligned with Nader, who hated him. They were furious with him. And I was like, yeah, I understand, but like, you have to, like, can we figure out what the real problem is here? Like someone running for office in a democracy is the most noble thing you can do. Like, clearly there's some fundamental problem that needs to be fixed here. So what is that? And that's what led me down this road.
Let's go down this road and let's look at some of these problems. You have built a slide. Could I get plural versus approval voting? Plurality voting versus approval voting. Can you break down what we're seeing here?
Yeah. So this is approval voting on the right, compared to plurality voting, which is our current voting method, which is the voting method that we've all used all our lives. You have a list of candidates and the rule is vote for one. Whereas with approval voting, it's almost exactly the same. We still have the same list of candidates. We still have check boxes next to their name. We're not putting them in order of preference. We're not giving them 1 to 5 stars. But the rule now is we just basically remove the rule that says you can only like one person. So now you can vote for as many people as you want. So you're doing something very different where instead of having 1 vote to give to one candidate, you can now separate all the candidates into 2 groups. People I support, people I don't support. And you can draw that line wherever you want, depending on what's most important to you. It's just way more flexible, and it eliminates the biggest problem with plurality voting, which is vote splitting, which is people who are similar split the vote and hurt each other simply by their presence in the race, causing someone who potentially has a lot less support to win.
Got it. We can pull that for a second. I see that you had Harriet Tubman up there, Gandhi up there, and a couple of people of the like, but you didn't vote for Hitler. So let's say someone's a little bit off and they checked Hitler as well, meaning they approved every single person. Is that also allowed?
I mean, it would be, there's no reason to do that. You might as well stay home. I mean, if you vote for everybody, it's the same as not voting. Good.
So there is precedent for someone just to throw their vote away, or
sure.
Would you just have to not vote for one person? As in, instead of going vote for one person, would it then be pick everyone that you agree with, but you at least have to not vote for one person?
Yeah. I mean, strategically, it doesn't. You have to vote for at least one person. You have to not vote for at least one person in order to have any effect on the outcome of the election. If you don't vote for anybody, or if you vote for everybody, you're not helping or hurting anybody. You're not giving anybody an advantage over anyone else.
So let's look at what life was before then. Could I get St. Louis 2017? What am I looking at?
So this was St. Louis mayor election in 2017. This was the Democratic primary, which is essentially the winner of this wins the election because St. Louis is a very Democratic city. So whoever wins this goes on to win the general. You had 7 candidates, 5 black, 2 white. Do you have the percentages, or is this what you have?
I don't think I pulled out the percentages just because I think you can break it, but I can totally pull those numbers for you if you want.
No, I can tell you. I mean,
Okay.
I can basically the person in the top left, Lyda Cruson, got 32% of the vote. The second place, so it goes in order down. Tashara Jones got like 30% of the vote. Lewis Reed got, so I'm going to start forgetting, somewhere in the 20s maybe, and Antonio French got like 16%. Basically, and again, this is, and I don't want to I don't want to oversimplify things because I don't know anything about these candidates other than, what I can see here. I don't know their politics. But it is clear that it's fair to say that 2/3 of St. Louis voted for a black person for mayor, and the white person won with 32% of the vote, which means that she didn't have to reach out to the whole city. She didn't have to appeal to the whole city. She only had to find 32% of the city that was willing to vote for her, and that was enough for her to win. And this was sort of the instigating thing that caused St. Louis. They had elections like this before, and this is very common. Like, it's not just St. Louis; it's all over. That sort of led to them creating this ballot measure, which got on the ballot last year and passed to use approval voting going forward.
All right. Now that it's gotten approved, will the incumbent be running again in St. Louis?
She will not. After it passed, she said she would not be running for the next term.
Because she's tired, right? She's just, you know what?
Probably
She's
wants
done
to
enough,
spend more
right?
time with her family. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So let's look at like multi-winner elections then. Let's break this down for a second.
Sure. Oh, there we go.
So I see single winner, I see multi-winner. Can you make sense of what we're seeing here and how it applies to AEA?
Right. So there are two. I mean, you don't necessarily have to split elections into this. Single winner just means there's only one seat open. So like President of Equity, Western Regional VP, and then multi-winner just means we're electing more than one person to in the same category. So Eastern Stage Manager Counselor, you'll have however many people running for however many seats. I don't actually know what the number is. Western Principal Delegate, there were, 20 some people elected, or 30, I don't remember. So that's a multi-winner because we're electing more than one person to the same office at the same time.
All right, can we pull this for a second? So in the world of actors equity, where someone can be running and we have no idea who they are outside of like their statement or a little bit, or maybe a YouTube video of them singing at 54 below. How do we really apply this so that's a little more effective as opposed to people just guessing?
Oh gosh. I mean, I don't know. I mean, as far as like, how do we get people to do their research? I think that having a better voting method that allows you to express what you want to express probably is going to encourage people to do more research than not. I'll give the example of like the 2020 Democratic primary for president. There were 20 people running. And I knew that when it came to California voting, it was going to come down to probably Biden versus either Sanders or Warren. Like the top people were going to be those three. And so it was going to be, so it was really going to be whether you're, on the Warren Sanders side or whether you're on the Biden side. You're going to have to pick which of those sides you're on, because you only get one vote. And that's the only thing that there is worth saying, because if you vote for somebody else, you're just throwing your vote away. You're not weighing in on the actual, that thing. So I had no incentive to research the other 20 candidates or the other, 17 candidates. There were people I'm sure I would have liked, but I was like, why am I going to spend my time getting excited about somebody when I can't vote for them? I'm not going to be able to express that. It's just going to add to my frustration. And I have I have way too much frustration and fury in my life to deliberately, I need to like take care of myself sometimes and protect myself from that. So it's just like, what it's going to be is I'm going to wait till the night before the election, the primary in California. I'm going to look at the polls and then I'm going to decide then who I got to vote for.
It's interesting. There's a article in here. I think it's Article 7 of the. No, is it Article 7? Let me actually be right about this bill. But it's Article 8, the Lift Every Voice, which kind of parallels a lot. That's why you caught my interest a little bit. Only because for me, I'm like, well, the election process. We've moved to Zoom. We've moved to the digital process. Why can't we have these people talking and speaking? Because what's important to me is who can do a good job in those negotiating rooms? Who can do a good job of getting their point across in the counselor rooms? These are important things. Like you can have someone incredibly smart, but if you don't know how to communicate, what's the point? So that's always been kind of interesting to me, figuring out how to make that happen, making sure that we make it official in writing, that statements have to come out with the names and things of the like, so that we can set this new version of voting up for success. I think that's a really cool and interesting idea.
Yeah, I like the idea of having people be able to, put themselves out there or have a forum, of an official forum for them doing that. And you also advocate for having elected counselors or at least the president have like office hours.
Tis true. I think open office hours are incredible. I can speak for my agency. Office hours has changed the game and just understanding and getting knowledge. But also what I found was with the liaison cities specifically is that they get a lot of orders barked down, but they don't get to really communicate with the top. So the idea of having the president and the executive director sit just for a cycle or once a month, those 2 hours, you get direct access. Because what I've learned is there's a lot of times our VPs and people in positions of power, they don't know what's going on. And it's just a matter of communication and figuring out how to get that pipeline a little bit cleaner. So yeah, I'm excited to see where that goes. Could I ask you one more thing about your motions and the things you want to bring to the convention?
Yes, you can.
Was
that it?
No, I want to talk to you about sequential proportional voting.
Yeah.
Can you explain what we're seeing?
Yeah. So this is sort of, you can see up at the top the electorate. So that's like, say that's the union. And this is a simplistic example where you've got just two opinions out in the electorate. You've got 60% of the people that are orange and 40% that are blue. So these are like conflicting opinions. And you've got a governing body of 10 people, and you've got all these candidates that run. You've got 10 of each, 10 orange people and 10 blue people running down at the bottom there. And they're in order of how many votes they got. So all the orange people got more votes than all the blue people because the orange people are a majority of the electorate. And what happens then normally is that all the orange people would get elected. You'd have 10 orange people on the governing body. And that is something called the tyranny of the majority, where basically the majority has all the power and there's no sort of dissenting voice, or there's no sort of alternative voice. There's less perspective on the governing body. And sort of based on the idea that what we want is a governing body that is more representative and more diverse and more inclusive of all the different opinions out in the electorate. What we would prefer to have is a governing body that's 60-40, orange and blue. Sequential proportional voting is simply a way of counting these votes once the votes are cast and adding in this value of we're saying that it is more valuable to add someone to the governing body if they represent people who don't yet have a voice. And by using this sort of more complicated algorithm to count the votes, where you're reweighting the votes based on how many people got in that you voted for, you end up with a governing body that is more proportional, where you end up with a governing body you can see that is actually 60-40 instead of being 100% orange.
All right. So this is my big question for you. A big argument that I'm learning exists within Actors Equity is this idea of slates during the convention. The idea of a bunch of people running together, getting it on. Does this second part of your idea, does this encourage the creation of slates and parties and divides?
I don't think so. I would think that it would give slates less power. I haven't really noticed in equity, not as much as in SAG-AFTRA, how important slates are. I don't think this gives, but also I do want to say that the point is to give each voter the ability to express what they want to express, to have the freedom to say what they want to say. And if what I want to say is, most important thing to me is to get this one person elected, so I'm just going to vote for that one person. Or if the most important thing to me is to this person who's running is someone who absolutely should not serve, and the most important thing to me is to not have that person be elected, I can vote for everybody else and anything in between. And so the most important thing about the system is that each person gets to decide for themselves what they want to say. So I would say that you may not like slates, someone else may not like slates, I may not like slates, someone might like a slate. And if you want to vote for a slate, that is just another thing that someone might want to express. And so I do want to, while I'm saying I don't think this gives more power to slates, I think it gives less power to slates, I also want to say that let's also not tell people what they should feel and what they should want.
Speaking of things we should feel or we should want, there was a request given from someone who is very passionate about changing the law when it comes to joining equity. And instead of having that person, or instead of just putting the letter up there, I reached out to a delegate. I said, hey, Alyssa Gomez, can you help me? I would love it if you could read this letter. And Jessica, I would like you to listen, and I would like to get your response as if you're hearing this for the first time. I know you've been working on this extensively, but I would definitely like to hear how you break down this letter, what the issues are, and introduce, because what I'm learning is a lot of people who are American are fully unaware, rightfully unaware, because it's not something that directly concerns them. But I would love for you to help break this down. So let's set you up for success. Could I get Alyssa Gomez reads the House Down Boots?
Hi, Davon. Thanks so much for your interest in advocacy. This is an unfortunate situation that honestly rocked my world. This is what happened. My name is Inés Domínguez del Corral, and I am a musical theater performer. I got hired by Imagination Stage in Bethesda for their repertory shows Zomo and Thumbelina in December 2019. I have an active O-1B visa for extraordinary ability in the arts and submitted a copy of this visa together with my contract to the union on the first days of January 2020 when I signed the contract. I also made clear that I wanted to join the union. I had asked the membership department several times through phone calls if I was eligible to join like everybody else upon signing an AEA contract, and the answer was always yes. AEA sent me the joining packet and the application form, and I filled it and sent it. Almost immediately, Equity started taking out the deductions towards my membership. 2 months later, my card hadn't arrived like they said it would. My colleague in the cast, who was also joining the union, had gotten his card in the mail already. So I got in touch with Jonathan Palmiotti and the membership supervisor, and they told me that until I have a green card or until I am a U.S. citizen, I cannot have a valid and working AEA membership, only a frozen one. I was very confused by this because it was all new information to me. In all the documents I was sent and in all the research that I did on the Equity website, this information is nowhere to be found. It is very vague, and I called the membership department, and they also never informed me of this. I do not wish to join the union under a frozen membership for obvious reasons. I would like to join like everyone else, since I have a valid artist visa that is specific for aliens of extraordinary ability in the performing arts, and a work permit in the United States, and have lived and worked here legally and successfully for longer than half a decade. I was never informed by the union before about having to have a frozen membership, and I also don't see why I can't be held to the same standards. I don't understand why I'm literally just now finding out about all of the supposed restrictions I'd have with Equity should I decide to join. Never was I informed about this in the many times I called, and in the 3 months I was working under this contract while the dues were being deducted too. As you can imagine, this is very frustrating for me, and honestly, the possibility of joining Equity like everyone else with the same rights, active membership, and opportunities is a deal breaker for my future. And getting a green card, even if I have the credentials, costs more than $12,000, and that is only for the application, which they can always deny. I am incredibly shocked by this policy from a union that prides itself from being inclusive. just, and that is essentially there to work in favor of the performing artists. Specifically, the right I consider I should have is to be part of the union on an active membership basis, given the fact that A, I have a legal USA work permit, and B, I would be paying my membership and dues just like everyone else. What is even more unfathomable is that the type of membership version that I am being told is my only option not only does not help me, but actually hinders my professional opportunities and careers because one, a frozen membership in general has a negative connotation and leaves producers and casting directors wondering why my membership is frozen. Did I not pay my dues? Etc. Two, it puts an additional burden on people who wish to hire me because they'd need to do additional paperwork and get approval to hire me. Other talent doesn't need to get this approval. This makes it even harder to get work. Three, despite having a frozen membership, I would still not be allowed to get non-union work. 4. In NYC especially, auditioning for union jobs as a non-union, frozen membership actor is insanely difficult. I already have a visa that certifies my capacities, talent, and qualifications, and a work permit for the United States, so I don't see how a frozen membership would seem logical or fair in any way. I really hope there's something that can be done to reconsider this policy that I wasn't informed about and that is discriminatory and unjust, to say the least.
Jessica,
Thank you.
What do you say to that?
I say to that it just makes my blood boil. I've spoken to Inez before, or corresponded with her before, and the issues that she's faced are issues that have been going on for decades, and issues that have affected hundreds, if not thousands, of individuals, and only serve to make our union not only discriminatory but weaker. I want to break it down because not everybody may be familiar with like the issues at play or why these issues have come about. But I'd just like to start with with the statement that there is no employer-based way to get a green card for artists. No traditional way to get a green card for artists aside from through these working visas. So the path to immigration is usually there's just different ways to be an immigrant in America, and if you are coming here as an artist, the only path is through an artist's visa in order to gain work, to collect work for your portfolio, and then prove to the U.S. government through an EB-1 application that you are worthy of being a green card holder in this country, and you can stay here for longer terms. The only way in which to get any of that kind of documentation or to gather a portfolio is through these visas. So just to break it down. Usually what happens is somebody from another country, and I'm actually originally from Canada. These are issues that I faced for upwards of 15 years with our union. So somebody from another country will come here. Usually it's through an education program. A lot of folks who are actors and even stage managers come to America and through like a university program. You're given about a year after you graduate from a 4-year accredited university program under an OPT, which is optional practical training. It has fewer restrictions for you to find a job that allows you to stay here, which is, that's not always how it works with artists. So usually, there are artists out there who manage to who find jobs on these OPTs after their first year of university, and and through gathering of these materials, apply for an O1 visa. The O1 visa has to meet certain benchmarks to let you know, they are actually the same qualifications as the EB1 green card, just with like lower, they don't need to be as extensive. And just to give you an idea of some of these qualifications, it's national press coverage or national awards. And these are all subjective things as well, because it's an individual who's reviewing these portfolios. One of the qualifications is, do you have an Oscar? These are the things that that are benchmarks to get an O1 or an EB1 green card. So just to give you an idea. So these artists, they gather work and they apply for this O1 visa, and they get this visa. And usually this is like the only way that you can work freelance or gig work, which is what we do. And it's usually signed off on by their agency or by an agent who becomes their sponsor. So with this visa, this is the only way that they can continue to collect work and then, gather their portfolio and then eventually apply for a green card to eventually become a citizen and work here. So what has happened now that, did a little bit about O1 visas. The O1 visa is work authorization in the arts under the category in which you apply for it. So if I say that I am an actor, I'm an actor and I'm applying for my O1 visa under an actor, I'm allowed to do any kind of acting work under this O1 visa. So what happens is these artists will go through the audition process or get a job as a stage manager that is attached to an equity contract. And they'll go to equity and say, hey, I got this contract. I want to join the union. And equity will do one of two things. If seeing or knowing that they are not an American citizen or a US green card holder, they will say, no, you can't join the union. Or they will say that, yeah, you can join the union, but we'll freeze your membership when you're not on contract. And you will not get any of the benefits or have access to job opportunities like auditions or the stage manager listings while you're not on contract, which is, it's why. So the most egregious part of it, sorry, I'm like just blathering here. The most egregious part of it is actually what happens when staff or membership says that, no, you cannot join the union, is it creates a lot of red tape for these individuals. Even though they're allowed to work in the US, the producer will be like, after going back and forth so many times, or if it's under a, you get a job that starts next week, the producer will just say, you know what, this is too much trouble. You don't get this job anymore. And they'll give it to somebody else. So this is, not is it only unjust, but there's, it's completely outdated as far as like, our Civil Rights Acts and our Immigration and Reform Acts. And I'm going to explain in a moment why it leaves the union also open to lawsuits. Because just to, for those who may or not be familiar with employment law, it is actually not legal to ask anybody before they are hired within and during the I-9 verification process for documentation of whether or not they are a citizen or a green card holder or even have work authorization. So the fact that that the union is gatekeeping people from getting these jobs and before they even get to the I-9 verification process is incredibly, I have no other way to say it, but it's illegal.
It's illegal. It's illegal. It's illegal.
And and it has to change. It's language that is in our Constitution. It's language that in our equity Constitution. It's language that's in our equity bylaws, and it's language that is in all of our CBAs to divide the classes of membership between members, which is like, full members, non-resident alien members. I'll get to that, why that's not a real thing in a moment. And then honorary members, and then other, classes of membership that the National Council can create. The non-resident alien members, which are, what they have designated folks who do not have a green card or are citizens, are essentially subject to being denied membership or having their memberships frozen, and essentially are, all these barriers to working and staying in this country are put in front of them. That is the rundown.
Break down, because for me, that language of non-resident alien and things of the like, I as I research it, I go, that's very pointed. Why do you think that happened?
So I think it's outdated language. I do not, as of recent language that's in immigration law, it is not actually an immigration term. It is actually a tax term. So non-resident alien, I don't know if any of you have ever done your own taxes or whatever, but usually you'll be asked, are you a permanent resident or a non-resident alien? And it has to do with how long you work in the US every year or how many days you spend in the US every year. Even Equity has created this, back in the 50s or whenever this language was created, or even before that, created this term to mean non-permanent resident and non-US citizen, when in fact our current usage, if not has always been our usage of it, is somebody who is both not a green card holder, as well as somebody who spends less than 29 days in the US every year. So even though they're like enforcing this segment of membership, it doesn't actually describe the people that they're enforcing it upon. If that makes any sense. I'm sure that was really garbled, but I hope that made some sense.
No, I think it makes sense. I also think it's just dense. It's a very convoluted for the sake of convolution. It's very complicated, and I think you're doing a bang up job of breaking it down. I think you're breaking it down better than I ever could. But
thank you.
Here's another thing. So what does a change like that look like for you?
A change like that looks like to me entirely striking the language of non-resident alien from our Constitution, from our bylaws, and our CBAs. That I do not like. I know why this language was created, and I believe deep down in my bones that it is protectionist language. It is language that is meant to keep people out and protect. It speaks to the title of your part of the bill, this article, where it's reject the wall. It is a wall that has been put up to keep people out, to protect our jobs. And that's not the job, that is not the job of a union. Like, our union becomes weaker by keeping people out and creating a whole subset of incredibly talented and qualified people to do non-union work and forcing them to do non-union work. Like, it's just ridiculous. And not only is it discriminatory, it's outdated, it is unjust and unlawful, and all the things that mean that it needs to be changed and struck entirely.
I agree. I feel like even with the Black Theater Matters bill, we take it so easy. We take it so easy, but I feel like you get the job done. That's literally what has to happen. Because I liken it when I'm explaining it to people. I go, do you know that South Park episode? Or I think it was a whole season where like they're going through and they're just like, they took our jobs. And the whole idea is they're trying to protect these jobs that are crap. Like, it's literally the personification, the real life personification of that whole entire like cartoon episode. Do you believe that this is something that, for example, we have a situation where everyone can wise up and go, oh my God, the union owes me money. I'm filing my lawsuit today. Like, is this one of those things, understanding the sheer damage decisions like this can cause if action were to be taken or legal action were to be pursued? Is this something that can be fixed today or tomorrow without going through the Constitution?
Everything that I have heard is points towards that, yes, we can enact policies or change policies internally, without necessarily going through the Constitution or going through the convention. But that doesn't mean that the language of the Constitution, bylaws, and ultimately the CBAs doesn't need to change, because it's written there bold in documentation that we can discriminate, and I'm pretty sure the only way that can change is through the convention or through a referendum of our membership. So yes, I think that like staff can be like, oh, hey, we didn't know, even though I've been yelling it for 15 years, that this is bad and this should change. I guess we'll change it, but it doesn't. They're enforcing it because it's in our documentation.
That's wild. That's wild. That's great. It's great. It's awful. It's a lot of things.
It's a lot of awful, and it's time it changes.
All right. So if you're just tuning in, I feel like we're one of those commercials where it's been like, have you been discriminated against? Like one of those law commercials that come on late at night. Sue now. Log on to the Black Theater Matters bill and sue now. It's awful. I think I want to bounce for a little bit, and then I'm going to try and draw this line a little bit. And Erica, I know you've been standing. Erica, for anyone watching, Erica Walsh has decided to stand through this entire episode of The Receipts. Standing for justice. How are you feeling? How are your legs?
Everybody spends so much time sitting. I had to make a change. And for the first time since high school, and I am ashamed to say this, I bought a music stand. I was a musician without a music stand. I was putting my music on like the counter in the kitchen, like all sorts of places. So now I have that. And now I have the option of standing or sitting in a very ergonomic way without spending a lot of money on equipment.
I mean, that's always the goal. How can I save money? I'm gonna straight up just ask it, like, what does an equitable space for acting musicians look like for you?
To my knowledge right now, that would be an actor-musician committee. As I understand the process in my time as a delegate, that is where we will be able to affect changes in our CBAs. That's where we can account for the different employment categories for actor-musicians. And that is how we can best facilitate conversation between IATSE and AFM, which is Stagehands and Actors, American Federation of Musicians, which is primarily a New York problem as I see it, where we need to communicate with them, but also can be a national issue. And to my knowledge, and from what people have told me in conversations that I've had with people who know so much more than I do, that would be the answer to start moving forward as we stand now with the system that we have.
With all the committees and the argument that like, we're too bloated with committees, how do you justify introducing yet another committee?
Because, well, first of all, actor-musician shows have been around for 40 years. So because I come now when we have too many doesn't actually minimize the problem and the need. It's just bad timing on my personal part. Sidebar, my castmate made the same assertion in 2013. So that was 8 years ago, and that's just one person that I know of. There are people on council who have brought up actor-musician issues that haven't moved forward for various reasons. So why now? We're shut down now. When we reopen, we're going to have reduced cast sizes. People are going to try to minimize the number of people in their buildings. It could be that people will want to use actor-musicians even more because you don't have to have an orchestra.
Let's talk about that.
You're testing fewer employees too. So your PPE is lower, your cost along the line are lower. So
the U.S. Bureau, oh God, Baltimore is coming out. My Baltimore accent comes out when I get really excited about these things.
Oh, I love this.
I try to hide it, but you can always tell when I'm excited because the words just sound crazy. Over $877 billion. That's 4.5 of the economy. That's over 5 million jobs are produced from the American arts sector. That is a very magical statistic that is given by the U.S. Bureau. Can I get Playbill 1? There was an article that came out that said how much money do Broadway actors make? With a beautiful graphic, Broadway wages. Could I get playbill number 2? So in this, there were a couple of things that stood out. The first sentence, which is like the current minimum salary for an equity performer on Broadway is $2,034 a week. And then they break it down a little bit more. Performers can also get 20 weekly extra if the union determines an extraordinary risk. And what is being asked of the actor? Or $8 more if a performer is asked to move set pieces. Understudies, they're looking at 101. What is that? $101.70. That's $15 if a performer is only a partial swing. Dance captains are getting $406.80 extra in their salary. Dance captains $203.40 extra. Just throwing these numbers around. So when you look at and then there's this idea of people getting a bonus of $2,600. So you can pull that down. When people
I want a bonus. We have bonuses.
News to me. But when these articles and stuff are out here like that, and people look at you and go, "What's the problem?" How do you respond to stuff like that?
Can you forward me that? Can you just forward me that? Because that will help me so much. So what you read in that, or you read things like swings, you read things like understudies, you read chorus, you read specialty. There is none of that that explicitly applies to actor musicians. A chorus, for those who don't know, chorus roles are different than principal roles, and a lot of actor musician shows are principal roles. Due to the fact that they're smaller and therefore we do more, so the parts are larger and the chorus classification doesn't apply. So right there, all of those doublings out the window. There is no specialty. There is no, the extraordinary risk is a blanket that applies to all employment categories, but all of that chorus language, gone. That understudy language and that swing language, very rarely does it apply to actor musicians. I believe Great Comet had swings. Ones did not. We had understudies. Understudies save your show, and they work harder most of the time than anybody else in the building. They received zero help on ones in terms of being compensated for learning legitimately 7 instruments for some, like, over 3 tracks or more. I can't even imagine how many some of my colleagues had to learn. It was an outrageous number. So yes, that top line with that minimum will apply to an actor or musician. All those other points may or may not apply. We don't have any language for a music captain. We insist, usually, we being people who have done an actor musician contract, usually insist at some point in the rehearsal process that we need a music captain.
What are you told?
So most of the time people say yes. I don't know. I haven't encountered a time when they say no, but then I also don't know how that translates monetarily. I don't know what the producer literally chooses to compensate that person for, because there is no language. And the biggest problem about all this language not being in our CBAs is that when we do encounter an issue on a contract, the response is call your business rep. There's no language for it in a CBA. So all staff can say is, sorry, we can't help you because it's not in the contract. Excuse me, that is my door for some reason. But if there's no language, where do they go? They say, do the right thing to the employer, like that. Well, people are also going to look out for their production and their interest and their, how much money they're spending. So like, that's their prerogative and that's what they're going to do. But what we can do as a union is say, well, like, here's your floor that you don't go below. And we don't have that floor at all. Most of the time it isn't a problem, but this shows have picked up nationally. So you talk about Broadway, that's the Broadway minimum. It happens regionally more and more. LORT contracts, there are small professional theater contracts, SPTs. Like it's not a New York centric issue. It's a national one. And in my experience personally, I stopped even trying to call equity about it. Because I would why would you get anywhere? So the reporting has even stopped because now we are basically on Facebook group being like, what happened on that contract? How did you handle this? What did you do? And then we figure it out and we try to negotiate on our own. And if that was a successful manner, that's basically, we formed a little mini union, and people say, oh, well, your agent can negotiate for you. well, if that was always productive, we wouldn't have the union either. So it's just interesting.
For me, it was interesting because, like you said, you've been around for 40 years. This isn't some new thing that happened like 2009 or something.
And that's only just what I know of. I mean, like, there's probably a few other times, right?
Well, the idea of like music and theater going hand in hand, it's older than all of us. Like it's tradition at this point. That's why I wanted to look. I was able, because originally I was supposed to do the show live in Orlando and like be in front of Disney World and all that. And then I realized we're in the middle of a pandemic. That sounds really dumb. So I'm still here in Bayonne, New Jersey. But in speaking with Disney and people who have been working there, they informed me of something that was very interesting in regards to our own union. In this email, I get that there was a resolution that was passed in 2001, and this is how it goes. Resolved to approve the recommendations of the ACCA for the creation of the position of vocal captain at Walt Disney World and the internal document describing the duties of the same, and for changes in the internal documents describing the duties of dance captain and the duties of dance captain Walt Disney World, which means the language was at some point created. Now, the question is, why didn't it grow beyond Disney? So when you think of the strategy of how we can get people to understand this, and we have counselors who I guess are privy to this information, was any of this ever presented all the way to this day, that there's already language that was somewhat created for this?
In the framework of actor musician?
In actor musician. So like you're saying, having musician captain and things of the like, it seems like they've gone down this road before, and that this isn't a new precedence. So have you been made privy to this or anything of the like?
I don't, as far as I know, there's no actor musician specific language that has been made outside of some contracts have that you may rent your instrument to a production at a rate that you negotiate for yourself, and that your employment is not contingent upon your, yes, eyebrow raise. Your employment is not contingent upon your rental, which in talking to casting, they were like, nobody's ever not gotten a job because they didn't want to rent an instrument. So, and then I believe some have that insurance specifically has to cover your instrument, because usually instruments do cost a lot more money, which is why I don't use my violin in production. And also sentimental reasons. And then there are some promulgated agreements that have an actual rental rate that is not specific to instrument at all. It's just, it's actually not a rental rate. It's a bump. We have one contract that has one bump that was brought to my attention, like legitimately in September or August of this past year. So it wasn't even well known even by people working those contracts that, oh, wait, we do have a bump in this one thing. People were treating that as an instrument rental rate. So that was misinterpreted and never corrected somehow. Because it was still there, but like they were getting the bump, but they weren't getting a bump and then being able to negotiate a rental. They thought that was their rental.
Got it. And no one's just been able to clarify that.
Yeah, I think it was just like somebody misinterpreted, and then, everybody's eager to work and wants to get out there, and that seems like fair because that contract is designed to be a little more flexible for theaters with smaller budgets, and nobody corrected it. And then somebody, I don't want to start mentioning names out of turn, but people were talking about this and we're like, oh, call the business rep because you're kind of owed money now. So.
Another situation where we're owed money. Where are these business reps? Well, because of COVID, we know they are not here. But here's something that I thought was very interesting. Let's talk, you know what? Let's keep it open. I feel like I might need to do some live research, but let's talk strategy. Here's something that's kind of a wrench in the plan that we all, I think, need to start thinking about, is the idea of how much is this going to cost? I feel like that's the tale as old as time thing for anything. How much does this cost? Striking language costs money. We got to redo, like everything for some reason costs money. The second thing I think about is language. I feel that a lot of the conversations that are taking place now is, we can try that, but it's going to take us months and years to get the language correct. Do you buy those two arguments during the time of COVID and, no real money coming in?
Me? Everybody?
Anyone?
I mean, every time I hear an argument that it's too much money, I'm just like, okay, great. So use your excuse me. It's a matter of time management and allocating resources. I don't know how you make it fair, but like attack things as they come and don't do the work because the work seems too great. Work at it effectively and efficiently.
Yeah.
How about oh, sorry, go Michael.
I was gonna say it's not really a valid argument. It's like and I hear that a lot. It's like the first thing is, well, is it possible? That's not the first question. The first question is, do we want to do it? And if we want to do it, then we figure out what we want, and then we see what it's going to cost.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yes, things will cost money, all vaguely, but we do. Our greatest responsibility is to decide as delegates that something needs to be done, and what happens after that is also, partly on us. But our first step is to decide that something needs to be done, and then we go from there. So we can't be deciding something shouldn't be done because it's going to be too hard. That's insane. And also, I'm going to say that striking language don't really cost that much money. I'm going to say just talking from that point of view.
We're also bringing a lot more people to the table, a lot more people with ideas and excitement. Like I feel like I don't know if the issues that you two are talking about are just haven't been addressed just because of inertia, just because no one's got the time and no one's in the room fighting for it. Like we're now coming in, fighting for things, and we're going to a convention where we can get things done.
Yeah, and that's why we are here, is to get things done, not to debate how much effort something is going to take. And I will say that, the issues that I've been, railing against, maybe not vocally enough, have been, around for a really long time. And I will say that in particular to our international artist issues, it's that we've never had a voice in the room because we've been purposefully kept out of the room. And then the only way to weasel your way in the room is to be a giant pain in the butt like myself, and to eventually,
like 2 of us?
yeah, exactly. And that's what we're here for. And we're here because we have to speak up and we have to get things done.
So let's talk about the convention itself. You got 3 days. We got 3 days. Everybody has 3 days. How do you get everyone to believe that what you're pushing for is the most important?
Is one thing the most important?
This is an argument that I genuinely hate, and I think it's ridiculous. But it's been something. It's that Mad TV show, Lowered Expectations, where you're literally like they're trying now to lower expectations. To be like, no. Well, we got to think about what's most important, that argument is so triggering because it's like, well, if you got 3 days, and technically to me, the convention's already started. We already know the ideas that are out there. We have a way of communicating. We could literally all do our homework, all 200 of us just do our homework, and on the day of that thing, call to question. Yes, no. Okay, is there anything that's unclear? Okay, let's get this done. I feel like we actually have more time than we think if we aren't put in that situation. So to me, sometimes I question if that's strategically done on purpose to create that backlog and that issue, when in actuality, this can very much be streamlined.
I don't think anybody, when they voted for or thought of a convention, realized that, well, nobody can anticipate the shutdown, but nobody had any idea that this much would come up. I'm sure that's part of it. I don't think intentionally creating the backlog was a thought, because there's no way you can gauge this type of activism 2 years ago when they were talking about this. There's no way.
I find it, and you're 100% right about that. I always wonder, like, when it comes to processes, like, if, for example, if I know a problem's coming, I will try my best to solve it early. And some of us, like, there's certain issues that I'll look at and I'll be like, you know what? I remember my college days. I'll cram that the day before because I know I can.
Oh, yeah.
But for me, it seems like we have enough time out to where we could literally get a lot of this stuff done. Even the things that overall we know everyone's going to vote in favor of that. We could probably push those or tie some of those in together. I've been really thinking about that when it comes to strategy and stuff like that. So in a situation, delete me from it. If we know that we want election reform, if we know we want better things for actor musicians, and we know, Jessica Wu, that we want to banish all of this language, is it possible for the three of you to go, you know what? We know we have the votes for this. We're putting all this as one and we're moving it forward. Would you be open to something like that, or being able to just get those things through?
Yeah, if this was a thing, I personally am a little bit, I feel, I don't know about the rest of you, but I felt a little in the dark about the processes of this convention. And I'm a person who really needs to see a breakdown of schedule and be like, this is what's going to happen here, 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 here. And I have a hard time creating these things in a vacuum, or creating what that's going to look like in a vacuum. And if there was a way for all of us to know how to fill that out for ourselves beforehand, yeah.
I've legit been having like night terrors about that, because I feel like, again, the three of you on the screen, you've been doing incredible work. Like, all of us are trying to figure this out, but at the same time, there's a certain amount of shooting in the dark that's taking place. And it's a little horrifying that, for example, we could do all this work, and then the system that's put in place puts us back at the drawing table. Like, okay, we're rearranging all of this. It's been kind of a nightmare. Like, I've actually been having like night terrors.
I want to give like a little bit of hope to that.
Yes, that's why you're here.
What I've found from talking to people on council and other delegates is that either people were completely unaware, or they thought it was one specific thing that people were looking for, or with one specific issue on a production. So by speaking and telling all these stories regionally, and like, no, it's not that we want double pay both as an actor and then a whole nother paycheck as a musician. It's just the basics, like little things like that. Everybody's like, well, yes. Everyone I've talked to, nobody's been like, no, we can't handle that. They say, no, you can't have a committee. They say, no, you can't have this or that immediately. But nobody's been like, absolutely not. How dare you think about putting that kind of language in the contract? So what my hope is that we have a growing awareness of the issues that are important to delegates. Counselors have access to everything that we've been working on. And we have a growing list of things to work on in the convention. I just want to entertain the idea of maybe there are a couple of things that people unanimously seem, or not unanimously, but majority obviously want. Maybe there's a way to do something about it before the convention in council. Just throwing it out there. Because everybody's like, oh, wait to the convention. There are things we can do in council. So maybe somebody can be inspired to bring some of that new business up and get a ball rolling and take the initiative that supports what the delegates are already doing.
I think about the Sustainability Act that's in the Black Theater Matters bill, and how it's essentially, there was a woman named Mara Jill Herman who made a motion at the Eastern Regional to do away with the cards. And again, we've missed that deadline. That motion was approved and it was not honored, but she's working specifically in that one. And when we look at it, we go, this work is great, but it seems like we don't have to go through the Constitution or do anything else, because everything's practically been approved. Like, the work is there. They could do it today. They could do it tomorrow. And I do find that interesting, just how there is work that can be done ahead of. And I would be so happy to be like, hey, I'm coming on the show next week. We had to get rid of this, and this because it's already being implemented. That's huge. That's a win. That at least lets us know we're doing the correct work. We're all going in the right direction. When it comes to COVID and getting back to work, specifically for you, Erica, there's this idea already producers are throwing it around that, hey, we got to lower these. We got to lower these prices. We got to lower everything. We got to lower these wages because we're just getting back on our feet. When it comes to being an actor musician and introducing, this new legislation to make sure that it's a little bit more equitable, should you be entertaining that talk? Like, what does a rollback look like for something that hasn't been established yet?
It hasn't been established. There is no rollback. I mean, I don't think anybody, stage managers or actors, need to do a rollback in wages. And I think the way they've gone about approaching that on the Broadway League, they teased this in an article, like not even speaking to unions about rolling back wages as a way to save money. But if
I'm sure they'll be lowering ticket prices too.
I hope so. And I hope it means
They're
lowering
going to
facility
take a big hit
fees.
as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. If we say that we are doing this as a union for across the board, then I think it means it will look like you're not doing that for actor musicians to give us what everybody else already had. It's just what it's going to look like. But just because we didn't have it doesn't mean that we shouldn't start over together at the same place.
How do you?
I don't want to wait when I play 5 instruments to see the extra bumps for each instrument.
Yeah. Do you believe in putting that on like a percentage, or do you think there should be hard numbers when dealing with compensation for instruments and rentals and things of the like?
Yeah, well, we have numbers in our chorus agreements for those kind of bumps, but also the American Federation of Musicians has doubling rates in their contracts already. So musicians and orchestras do have doubling rates. So they've already established that. We can start there. And also, I do want to make sure that we do start with them too, especially in New York, because I never want to get into a case which has been echoed before of you are taking jobs away from union musicians. They need their jobs too. They need their salaries too. And if there's a way that we can look at actor musicians as being something that isn't a cheap replacement for a union musician, that's going to help both of us. Both unions.
Can we beat? This is what I was kind of figuring out how to ask, but you got us there. Can we beat another jurisdiction fight? Like, can we really handle that? Because right now, my concern is that argument you make of the other union going, "Hey, you're taking our jobs." We're getting that kind of language again. When that happens, if that were to happen, how do we navigate that, and how do we win that fight when it comes to jurisdiction?
I think that lies in defining what an actor musician is, which is, again, a definition that a committee can create. Just putting it out there, I believe that has happened and is happening, defining what our jobs are. But there are many musicians who do not want to do what I do. Like, they have no interest in doing that too. So the definition will help ease everybody up, feeling that the jobs that they are able to do are still there for them. And there are not actors who want to play in a pit or who can. So like there's a crossover, but there are clear different professions there too. But without the definition and without one union or the other actually stepping forward to get to that point, then we're going to have those jurisdictional disputes. And it happens every single production is like we've never encountered it before. Every production handles it differently. The response, the payments, everything is different. You always have to start over every single time you walk into the room.
If I may respond to that, Erica, what it really feels like to me is just this larger issue of the way that equity or a lot of our institutions just are not able to keep with the times. It is, if there's like if there's a definition for dancer in our CBAs or in any of our union language, there should be a definition for actor musician. I don't even know if we have a proper definition for stage manager yet. We're so far behind and we need to catch up. And this convention is an opportunity to catch up on a huge level, and we shouldn't shy away from it.
Absolutely.
All right, y'all. I actually want to thank you all for coming. I think this was very good. I think it's very substantive. My God. I again was happy to have all 4 of us together and talk, because I just feel like, again, whenever I hear you all going at it, I'm like, yes, get it. Michael, if someone wants to hear your full presentation, who is not a delegate or not, a counselor, how do they do that?
Well, I created a link and I told people that it was it was intended for delegates and counselors. I mean, I don't know. They can. Should I put it? Should I give you the link? Is that what you're saying? Like, do it right here and now, or if you're saying is it okay to share it more broadly? Because
No,
I'm
this
okay
is,
with that.
we're in think tank world now. We're just trying to figure this out live with people watching. But if you want, we can totally like link to, because I think what we're going to do with the Black Theater Matters Bill is also show the other motions that we're endorsing. Because again, a lot of the work all four of us do, it kind of complements each other in a weird way. One leads to the other, which leads to the other. So yeah, if you want, we can get that link out there. We can share that information if you are comfortable with it being public.
Oh, I would love to share it, and I don't think I doubt anyone on the call would object. I did say that it was intended. I was intending to share it with other delegates and counselors, but I really think I don't mean there were some questions at the end, but I mean, I think it's totally from my perspective. I think it's totally. I would love to share it with anybody that wants to watch it. It's about like 35 minutes, like before the questions, like as far as the length of the presentation.
We're working it out live. Same thing with you, Jessica Wu. Let's say someone else has a story and they're like, you know what? I want to be involved and I want to get on the ground floor. I want to share what has happened to me. Are you comfortable with them coming forward? And
Yeah.
how do they get in touch with you?
I totally just spoke right over you. Please, I've actually been collecting testimonials. I have a few dozen, and we need your stories because people aren't even aware that this thing exists, and it is truly. There are tragedies happening here. So please contact me. Do you want me to say my email out loud, or what do you think, Davon?
Do you have an email that you're okay with?
Yeah, it's on the internet. Everything's on the internet. Those clips from the beginning were on the internet. It's Jess. It's Jess, Jess, at jessica-wu.com. Pretty easy.
All
Send
right.
me your story. Just contact me, please. Thank you.
And the same question. Oh, that was quick.
Oh,
At the receipts, we work in real time. Erica, same exact question. If you have acting musicians who have ideas or just want to understand where you are in the process, are you okay with them reaching out to you?
Absolutely. So I have two ways that they can reach out. And the first one would be my email, which is equity@ericawalsh.com. But what I am actually starting to work on right now is putting together a survey to collect those stories for actor musicians, because there is no place that exists to my knowledge. And the biggest problem with things like this, especially when it comes to such a direct employer impacted situation, is that people want to not jeopardize future jobs by speaking up for themselves. So this can be anonymous. It is completely optional if you share who you are. That would go straight to me and to Robert Ariza, who is working with me on that. So those are currently who that is seeing that. And I would reach out to anybody if we are going to share that, who would provide a way to reach back to them.
Phenomenal. I am so interested in seeing what you all do, and I'm excited for the convention. Again, I think I already told you all, I think the world of you all. It's just been great watching you all like go, move, and navigate. And it's inspiring. So thank you all for coming and entertaining us today and saying yes and coming. And right now, I want to turn it over to another delegate who has been very vocal about sexual harassment and sexual assault. That is Delegate Maria Cristina Pasita Sly. Oh, God, no. Ooh, I got it. I got excited halfway through and I messed up. So here we go. We have Delegate Maria Cristina Pasita Sly with a sly comment.
Hey friends, this is Maria Cristina with your fun fact for the day. Did you know that employers are legally responsible for stopping harassment in the workplace? They are automatically responsible of the manager or the supervisor. This includes if the manager or supervisor sexually harasses someone, or if the manager or supervisor fails to do something to stop sexual harassment. In our case, that means that the producers are legally responsible to stop the sexual harassment. Sure does make you wonder, doesn't it? What a fun business that we're in. Have a great day.
I said what I said.
There it is. There they are. There it is. Delegates working together. Next week, we're going to have a topic about caregiving. Why? In the Black Theater Matters bill, there is a section, I believe it's under jurisdiction as well, where we talk about the subsidies and some way of making caregiving more accessible for parents who are on the road. One of the right off the bat statements that I got was, well, anyone that has a child chose to have that child. that was the legit response. Like, well, you chose to have that child. It's not our problem, which I think is incredibly inhumane. But the reason I really want to highlight that, just not to just deal with that comment, but I also, for myself, before I go through my 30s, I am now planning to have a child. This is something very important. It's something that is very huge when you talk about work-life balance and building a family and trying to keep this career like on track. For me, I spent the beginning of my career battling debt. As in, instead of me going out and auditioning here and there, I had spoken to some people who were in the business and they were like, yeah, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And I was like, well, how are your funds? Some of them had worse debt. Some of them were just not set up fiscally to survive and to win. So that was incredibly important to me, figuring out a path forward. Thank God. I think the business classes, school, everything, I think it cost around $100,000 for me to have all the skill sets that I wanted. Paid that no problem, because again, deciding what shows were equitable, what was good, and just figuring all that out. So when it comes again to me entering a new stage down the line of becoming a parent, this conversation is actually incredibly important. And I think a lot of it is the reason I think it's been dismissed probably has a lot to do with sexism. Most of the time when you think of caregiving, you think of the mom, the traditional mom. So this is something I actually want to address. So I just want to give a quick promo for the 3rd episode of season 2, in which we are going to be talking about caregiving. And it is going to be a big, hefty episode because it is a controversial topic for reasons that I don't think should be controversial. That's pretty much it. And I wanted to call this one a little bit early. Look, we're 3 minutes early according to that. And I just wanted to, again, thank you all for watching. If there is anything, can I get that ticker one more time? If at any point you have any ideas, I just took a bunch of meetings last week. If you have any ideas and you would like to get them heard, we have probably till March 6th. We have till March 6th to get all of that together. So essentially, that's the goal. March 6th, everyone get their ideas put out there. Do not hesitate, no matter how ridiculous you think it sounds or anything. Please feel free to go right there, thereceiptswithd.com/Black Theater Matters. There's a place where you can put in your idea or you can comment on ideas that are already out there. And I am willing to work with you. There will be no gaslighting. I will do as much research as possible and make sure that we all get the chance to create a more equitable union. So with that being said, thank you all for coming. This is episode 2, kind of a brainy episode, right? Of The Receipts. And I'll see you next week.